that brings me to the most common questions of all. So I've gathered these all together and I'm going to read some of them out. Maureen, how to be an advocate. Michelle, how to collaborate with teaching staff who don't want to collaborate with aides. Kath, how best to address the teacher in charge when their methodology mightn't be effective. Christy, how to help when you're not the classroom teacher, decision making. Carla, how to be a student's advocate to their teacher when the teacher is being dismissive. I'm just laughing because I know this is all true. And in fact, in the teacher assistant red book, page 58, Anna and I have a, what if the teacher doesn't want me to be in the room? What if the teacher doesn't like or trust me? So we get it. Lisa, how to engage teachers in the needs that they teach. Rachel, how to engage staff in change to bring about positive behaviour. Hi everyone, welcome to the Sue Larkey podcast. As I always say, you have to embrace difference to make a difference. Let's dive into today's podcast. Welcome back, everybody. I am so excited. Next week is Teacher Assistant Appreciation Week. And so this week, I asked teacher assistants to send in questions to be answered. Even if you're not a teacher assistant, this podcast is going to be full of top tips and strategies to support you, whether you're a parent, carer. It's a Q&A, and I'm sure lots of you have similar questions. So before I dive into the episode, I just wanted to ask you all to check your emails because on Friday, this week on Friday, you're going to get an email asking you to nominate a teacher assistant for flowers, and I'm going to send them flowers. I know it's only teacher assistant a week in Australia, but I'm happy to send them to New Zealand or somewhere else. If you've got a teacher assistant that you want to nominate, let's celebrate our teacher assistants. Now, when I asked the question on my Facebook page about questions for Teacher Assistant Appreciation Week, Julie said, remind these amazing angels that you give 150% to the kiddies. Remember self-care for them too. And a few teacher assistants did say, how do I turn off at the end of the day? That is so hard. And I know that for all of us, no matter what our role with neurodiverse kids, that can be very challenging trying to turn off at the end of the day. But I think celebrating what you have achieved and instead of thinking about what you haven't achieved. I think we're all guilty of getting to the end of the day and thinking, I haven't done this. I think one of the most powerful things is to always think about what you have done, not what you haven't done, or the small achievements the children have made. I mean, even getting to school for some of my kids is a massive, massive thing. So, I don't know how I pronounce your name, but I have a go. Shiad McDonald, you said, good idea, Sue. The main reason I stay in my role is because of my teacher assistant. And Diane said, as a teacher, I'd be lost without mine at school. They do not get enough credit or get near enough pay. They are true angels. Now, any of you who know me, I call teacher assistants angels. Some people think I overuse it, but personally, I don't think you can overuse it. Teacher assistants are such an integral part of making diverse learners engaged and encouraged and feeling like part of schools. So they're such an important part of our community. So watch out for an email Friday to nominate your teacher assistants. I want to see lots and lots of people nominating. I think last year we did it. We had over 1,000 and I think I ended up sending out like 10 bunches of flowers. All you have to do is send in their name or the team and that's it. And then I just randomly pick some numbers out. So please make sure you nominate for Teacher Assistant Appreciation Week next week. I'm also teacher assistants for a Teacher Assistant Appreciation Week. I'll have a special program for you with webinars, with ebooks, a whole lot of goodies to make the week wonderful. And teachers, I will also be sending out to you some cards that you can make for your teacher assistants or maybe get the kids to pick some flowers at home and bring in for them and put with the card. I'll send that out on the Wednesday with the winners. Okay, I'm talking too fast, but I'm super excited. I am still very close friends with all my teacher assistants. They made my teaching so enjoyable and made such a huge difference. So if you could see me now, you would laugh. I got all the Facebook questions. I cut them out. I highlighted them. I chose the ones that had the most likes or comments from other people as the priority. So I'm not going to get through all of them. But what I thought I would do, teacher assistants who are in my teacher assistant Facebook group, which is for people who have done my courses, the teacher assistant courses, I thought I'd post those questions over the next few weeks because often the community had great answers and then I can sort of answer them there too or direct you to more information. So I've chosen the ones that had the most likes. So the one from Leela about how do you support students who are anxious of making mistakes with their learning, ripping up pages, always needing a rubber, refusing to have a go. Now, I went back saying, great question for you. So, and Janine Green, how do you help a student who bursts into tears every time they lose a game or don't do well? So this is the same anxiety really for both of these students around making mistakes. And for many of my students, this is because they have what's called a one-track mind, which means they've put down the only answer they believe there is. So they don't see there are other answers. And this is where I use my what's your plan B? What's your plan C? But I have learned over the years, the first thing to do is teach them a strategy when they make a mistake. So when they make a mistake, the child is ripping up pages. What else could we be doing? Crossing it out. Now, you need to practice this when they're calm, not when they make a mistake. So we need to, what do they do in the class? So if I've got a kid who goes crazy with the rubber's not a good choice for them. I would be doing the crossing out. But some of my kids tend to cross out too much. You need to put them, we're going to put a one line, we're going to put two lines through it. As many of you know, I'm not a big fan of things being wrong. I like putting a circle around it as an opportunity, O for opportunity to fix it up, look it up, ask a friend. See, I don't believe that are mistakes. You either get it right, and I don't always think who is perfectly right anyway, but say in a spelling test, it's either right or it's an opportunity to learn. It's not just wrong and you leave it. So I like an O for opportunity. Look it up, fix it up, ask a friend. However, with making mistakes, with that one-track mind, you need to ask them, what is your plan B? So if they lose, what are they going to say to the person? Can we have another go? I might beat you next time. Well done. You need to tell them what to do. And that's where social stories and social scripts are very important. And those of you who have done the teacher assistant course part 1, remember I actually showed you how to do those social scripts. And I find social scripts very helpful both for making mistakes and losing. Actually, I'm just thinking in the course, I also talk about the your words matter. So things like saying it's wrong, that can make a child anxious. So not using words like wrong. Let's fix it up. What else can we do? And I also do a thing about mindset. And that's that, you don't know yet. Working on children changing their mindset with mistakes. So quite a lot of that I do cover in the teacher assistant course. So if you've done it, how about you go back and revisit? Remember, you got the transcript of the whole course. So have a look at those modules. If you haven't done it, half price for the whole of Teacher Assistant Week, $49. Most schools will pay it without even thinking. So go see your school now and ask them if you can do the teacher assistant course. But I still want to give you strategies. So model making mistakes. Really, actually, when you're writing, don't get it perfect all the time. Now, here is the big one. Stop correcting them all the time. I find when there's a teacher assistant, they often overcorrect the child. So for a week, I want you to ask yourself, does it really matter? Is the goal they're doing some writing or doing some maths? We don't expect them to get 100%. What happens if you had someone walking around next to you, following you around, this is how I look at it. If someone was in my house following me around, pointing out all the dirt in my house, I would become a little bit obsessive and anxious when that person came to my house. You're in their classroom constantly saying, fix this, fix that. You're adding some anxiety. Can you just think about not correcting them all the time? I know your job is to support them, but it's not to make them anxious by constantly correcting them. So ask yourself, what is the goal? Is your goal that they have a go? Then just let them have a go. Do you really expect them to be able to write hippopotamus? Look around. Does every other child know how to write that word? Don't constantly correct. And when you do correct, show them what to do, show making mistakes yourself. So I know I'm being a bit preachy there, but I just wanted to say that. So very important. And Janine, your child who bursts into tears every time they lose a game, you will need to practice that not before they start the game. So before you start the game, what can you do? The other thing I like to do is actually do some role plays with the children that happens with. And can you just check, because if it's a game like tag or tiggy or whatever you call it, sometimes my kids always are it. So just check that the other children, if a child loses, that the implication is that they're always it. You know, like if they lose, does that mean they're out for the rest of the day? Like just check that it's not them missing out on too many things. I hope that makes sense. Okay. The next one was that got lots of likes and similar questions. Steve Stokes, Tanya Andrea. Sorry, I am talking too fast. I really apologise. But it was about not spoon feeding and not over helping children and fading out prompts. And look, brilliant question. I think that is fantastic. And for example, Tanya Briney gave you a great answer about instead of using the video modeling, swapping to a laminated page. The other thing I would have is just have the first bit of the video, like unpack your bag, but don't show all the steps. So what we call editing it, or, you know, not editing, but breaking it to smaller chunks. So it's just unpack your bag, but the start of that video, and then pause it and let's see what you can do. But don't take it away too fast. I always say we don't take away ramps for wheelchairs because the ramp creates the access. So I really like the fact you're asking, does it need fading? Because in the teacher assistant free ebook that's going out next week for teacher assistants, there is exactly that. Number 7 in my top 10 tips is fade direct supports on occasions to allow the student to grow, but not all the time, on occasions to allow the child to grow. So really think about that. And number 1 is, which was your question, Steve, work towards the student becoming independent. Try to allow the students to do things for themselves at their own pace, even when they are falling behind a little. So only start to help when they are stressed. Doing things for the students promotes dependent behaviour and even increasing reliance on you. And this independence will help to instill self-assurance and self-esteem in the students as they learn new concepts and able to put them in place by themselves. So make sure you print out the ebook. I think it's really valuable for writing down things. But then on page 3, we've actually got Anna Tullerman's and myself 12 key strategies to set the students up for success. So things like working out what the barriers are before you give it to them, adapting the activity in advance, encouraging responses whether right or wrong, which is what I was talking about in the last question, show them examples of what to do, help them with organisation, and give preventative breaks. They're the top 6. There's even more. But with the give preventative breaks, I'm going to come to those in a minute because a lot of you asked about behaviours that I suspect are because the student's not getting enough preventative breaks. Okay, the next one was from Jenny Morrison about a child who's hiding or running away. Now, what I've done with these questions, I've got my favourite book, Behaviour Solutions for Inclusive Classrooms. Teacher assistants, get your schools to buy this book. Carry it around with you. It is the best book, okay? I call it See a Behaviour, look it up. So, page 42, hiding or running away when upset. Solutions. Being alone can be restorative. Do not force the child into crowded situations until he is ready to return. Allow him time away from the situation. Sorry, I'm just hesitating because it's all hymns, but you know it should be them because it's boys and girls. In the office, resource room, or another designated safe place until it has de-escalated, okay? Then they say try to help the child burn up some of their emotional energy by putting in place vigorous walk or time on a swing. Remember actually doing those movement breaks. And then it talks about using social scripts and then attempting to identify and predict when the times occur and then putting in place those, like they're saying, for example, a fire drill actually putting in place preparation before that happens. But I love this one. Above all, do not take behaviour personally. And Anna and I talk a lot about that in our red and blue books, okay? Teacher aids, it's hard not to, but angels, don't take it personally. Okay, Sarah, you asked how to support students who shut down and become unresponsive. So again, in the book, page 45, a student may isolate herself. Oh, they must fluctuate between him and her in the book. Herself by putting her head down or simply shutting down. She may physically isolate herself by reading a book at an inappropriate time or by body language, turning her back on others, for example. Like the student who chooses flight as a response to stress, she may choose to isolate herself from peers due to lack of social abilities. If she doesn't have the ability to initiate friendship or conversation, choosing to be off by herself is often a comfortable alternative. So that's a child who's removing themselves. But for me, students who shut down often is exactly like a meltdown. So what are their solutions? Actually, give them time. I agree. My rule is 5 minutes, but this says a few moments. I would give them some time because sometimes they just need that time to regroup. Again, remembering that this time can be restorative, but once they have done that, what are you going to do to help them come back? And so sometimes some reassurance, toilet, drink, but letting them know you're there. So exactly like a meltdown, you might need to put those things in place. So that's what they recommend in the book. Okay. This one is from Manal, who wanted to know about a little boy who wants to stand in front of the class and be the teacher. Now, we have had some emails back and forth about this one. Fantastic. So she's already done a designated spot, a social story about sitting, a wobble cushion, and lots of fidgets, which are exactly what the book recommends on page 51, showing a visual cue where their boundaries are. But the one that we had some emails back and forth, I've recommended because he wants to be the teacher on the schedule. He has set times he can be the teacher. And he does it at assembly, so I'd give him a job at assembly. So his job's to check the microphones or hold the microphone, so he's actually got a role. I suspect he doesn't like being in the crowd of the people. So I forgot to recommend this one to you, which is one I recommend all the time and is in my first book, Making It a Success. Consider allowing the student to sit on a small chair to help him keep his body to himself. But also some of my children who want to be up the front, that is because they don't want to be in the crowd. So put a chair at the back or the side. Now, what I have found most helpful over the years is not just a chair for them, a chair for a friend. I call it a friendship chair. So this is a chair for Robin and a friend. And anyone I see doing friendly things, they can sit in the friendship chair. What I've learned over the years, instead of the children going, how come Robin's allowed in the chair? They're all so busy trying to work out how to get in the friendship chair. And they'll tell me, I help Robin pack away. I help Robin do this. I would much rather children are actually being rewarded for being inclusive and letting me know and getting the friendship chair. I find that so good. And you can do the same at assembly. Have a chair for them. So I'd forgotten to mention that one too. So that's another good one. Okay. The next one was, who had this one? Sorry. Pauline Jones. How to accommodate a 6-year-old stamping his feet as stimming. Is there a way for him to get out quietly? So Pauline recommended a chair on the band and a band on the chair. And I agree. That would be brilliant. So you just get one of those physio bands and put it between the chair legs. I highly recommend that. But I also thought on page 125 of Behaviour Solutions, they've got a whole lot of movement breaks. And I just wonder if letting the child do some of these movement breaks, so getting them out of the classroom to run an errand, having something for them to do outside the playground, more movement breaks, getting the student to bounce on a bouncy ball, a therapy ball, do some push-ups, or allowing the student to stand at their desk. They were all the solutions in the book. So what I'm going to hopefully do for the blog this week is put your questions and then put the reference to the page number in that book and my ideas and where to find them. The next question was a great one too. Thank you, Glennis Johnson. How to assist a dysgraphia student in a school with no technology at all. And 4 of you wanted to know about that. So there is a brilliant new book called Getting Your Words on Paper. Okay, it's by Lauren Bruckner, who wrote The Kid's Guide to Being Awesome. She's an occupational therapist. I wish I'd had this when I was in the classroom. It is it's actually like a workbook. It has so many good ideas with helping children with dysgraphia. I will reference that, but I've also done a podcast on dysgraphia that would be helpful for you too. So have a listen to that podcast, and I'll make a note of that I didn't write down the number before I came. Oh, and there's my cat meowing. Sorry, Misty hasn't joined us for a podcast for a while. A while ago, I put a photo of her on Facebook. She likes to come in here when I'm doing my podcast. She thinks that's a good time to come and have cuddles. The next question was from Nadia Barrage about PDA students and understanding they're not deliberately being rebellious or disobedient. So I absolutely love the book. Can I tell you about pathological demand avoidance syndrome? I believe, teacher assistants, sometimes having books, and I'm the same when I go into schools and talk to teachers, often they don't really want to hear from me either. So I found over the years actually having books like that Behaviour Solution or that How to Get Words on Paper, actually having a book to refer to can be invaluable because it's not me and I can just go, oh, I saw this in this book and I thought that would really help the child. I found the book saying it rather than me, I don't know, people take it a bit better. Often I just, like in this case, I've put a little Post-it note in there, like I thought this was interesting, maybe we can try that. I find these things really, really helpful, and then I'm not trying to be like, I know what to do. It's more like, oh, let's look together. So in the PDA book, based on your question about they're truly processing and trying to work through their issues, in the book on page 28 to 32. I love it because it's about what you can do to help. Yeah. And it's really good. People ask me how they can help me and the child talks away. But what I like is it says some things that help me are Mum sorts out my clothes and packs my school bag the night before. So I only have to choose my snack for break time. I can choose to have my breakfast in the kitchen, in front of TV, or in my bedroom. Mum and Dad decided this was better than arguing about breakfast like we used to. Mum gives me a lift to school, even though it's not far away. Alice prefers to walk with her friends, but I can have longer to get ready if I go in the car. I have a bath and brush my teeth in the evening so that I don't manage to wash or brush my teeth in the morning. It doesn't matter as much. Mrs. Jones has a good system to help me to do my schoolwork. It's called Projects on Pause. I call it Project on Pause, as in PAWs. So I can draw pictures of Spongel on the folder. Anyway, you probably have to have a look at it. But this book is amazing. Sorry, I just realized a lot of it actually has illustrations you need to see. But this book is amazing. Can I tell you about pathological demand avoidance? And it's just a really easy read. The other one I love is The Defiant Child. Even though it says it's for parents, I think it's invaluable for schools. And I think when you research things together, then we can work together. However, that brings me to the most common questions of all. So I've gathered these all together and I'm going to read some of them out. Maureen, how to be an advocate. Michelle, how to collaborate with teaching staff who don't want to collaborate with aides. Kath, how best to address the teacher in charge when their methodology mightn't be effective. Christy, how to help when you're not the classroom teacher, decision making. Carla, how to be a student's advocate to their teacher when the teacher is being dismissive. I'm just laughing because I know this is all true. And in fact, in the teacher assistant red book, page 58, Anna and I have a, what if the teacher doesn't want me to be in the room? What if the teacher doesn't like or trust me? So we get it. Lisa, how to engage teachers in the needs that they teach. Rachel, how to engage staff in change to bring about positive behaviour. And Tracy, diffusing possessiveness and ownership, learning to share That was about 2 and 5 year olds. Sorry, I thought that was about teacher assistants. Apologise. I'll come back to that one, Tracy, if I get a moment. However, what I thought I would do is actually put an excerpt by Dean Beadle from the Teacher Assistant Part 2 course. You don't have to do Part 1 to do Part 2. But I did my original teacher assistant course. Hundreds of you did the course and wanted to learn more. And I felt that Dean Beadle, he has come to Australia many times. You've heard me talk about Dean before, I'm sure. But he and I had done this fantastic course, and I had done it with him, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. And I decided it was perfect for teacher assistants. I should repurpose it for teachers too. But the reason for that is his teacher assistant made such a huge impact on his life. So I'm going to put in an excerpt from the course where Dean talks about his teacher assistant. I have to warn you, or not warn you, I just have to tell you, Dean has the most fantastic sense of humour. He was diagnosed as a childhood monster as a child, which is terrible. That's what the word said. But if Dean was in my class today, he's now 30, he would have a diagnosis of ASD, OCD, ADHD and ODD. I think as a child, and having travelled with Dean and known him for a long time, I think all of those would be what he would get today rather than a childhood monster, which is embarrassing that is what he got labelled. However, I want you to listen to Dean, because what he says about teacher assistants and the importance of his teacher assistants is just invaluable. So over to Dean.
Now, I was blessed that I had a teaching assistant who was very supportive of me. I know you guys call them teacher aides. We call them teacher assistants in the UK. What I love about that is that the initials are TA, and that also stands for Territorial Army. And anyone who's been a teacher aide knows the job description is pretty much the same. Lots of running and rolling. But I was lucky enough to have a teacher assistant very early on in my school life, all the way through, who was my translator in a way. She helped me to make sense of the world around me and help the world to make sense of me. We also had a very strong relationship and a very strong bond. And in this next slide, I'm going to share with you a few thoughts on teaching assistants, teacher aides, because I think there's a lot of myths and misconceptions about teacher aides. I often meet staff at schools who will say, we don't want the child to have the same TA all of the time. We think it's dangerous that they get attached. Why are we fearful of autistic young people building relationships? Why are we fearful about autistic people building bonds? As long as they are well transitioned and well boundaried, why are we fearful of the very thing that makes life rich and wonderful? You know, my TA was with me for 5 years. I went on to a new school. She stayed at the school I was at. I do not have a shrine to her. I do not cry myself to sleep at night because she hasn't tucked me in. Why? Because it was an incredibly well-boundaried relationship and it was beautifully transitioned. I knew she wasn't coming with me. We prepared for that. This presumption that all autistic folk will develop an unhealthy attachment is again based on all that negative nonsense that is written about us. We should be encouraging positive connection. We should be encouraging bonds. And I'm all for a child having the same TA or the same 2 TAs for the whole week, because so much of the world changes. So much of the world is a variable. So much of the world is unpredictable. Is it any wonder that one part of the day that your TA becomes the one thing you like to keep the same? That's the rock to cling to when everything changes. Now, in my childhood, I had the same TA through primary. In secondary school, I had one regular TA who had me for half the week, and then a rotation of others just because of timetabling. I went into one school a few years ago, and there was a dad there who told me that his son wasn't allowed to have the same TA for more than an hour a day. So they were changing his TA hourly, and just to make it even better for that child, they didn't tell him who he was getting until the morning he arrived. And they wondered why he was having a meltdown halfway through the morning. I was surprised he managed to hold out that long, because all they were doing was flinging unpredictable at him. And it's always my view, instead of chucking change at children, what we do is we put support in place to help them to know what to do when unexpected change happens. Because we can craft a world around them that is fairly predictable. Sometimes change happens and it's unavoidable. Sometimes TA is ill. Sometimes teachers are broken down and can't make it in for the start of the day. broken down in the car, not emotionally, although both are possible, has broken down on the way in. So we prepare our children for what to do when that happens. What we don't do is fling the change at them until they get used to it. We put in place the preparations of what to do when the unexpected happens. We don't avoid building regular relationships up. What we do is we transition and boundary them well. Really important. But this assumption that we'll all build unhealthy dependencies, I think, is harmful. Having the same TA for me gave me some familiarity in amongst all the change. The teacher aide is often a huge well of knowledge about the child. And I go into a lot of schools where I see power battles between teachers and teacher aides, neither realising that both are there to help the other one. It is not the TA's job to teach that child, and they're not there to replace teacher. I've seen too many examples where the teacher will just hand the work to the teacher aide and say, off you go. No, the teacher aide isn't the teacher. They are there to support the child's other needs, but the teacher is still the teacher of that child. You have very different roles. One is not there to replace the other. Both are there to enhance the work of the other. And what worked best for me was when teachers and TAs were working together towards the common goal. I was lucky in my primary school, and I realised I was very fortunate that I was in a class where there was a large proportion of children with additional needs. So there happened to be a group of deaf children attached to our class who brought with them a teacher and a teaching assistant. I had my teaching assistant, we had our main class teacher, and then we had, I think, a rotation of 2 other teacher aides. So in this mainstream primary, we were lucky to have about 5 or 6 adults in the room at any given time. And my year 3 teacher once said to me, what was good about that, Dean, is that when I got sick of you, there were 5 others to take over. Lovely, kind, touched. But she was right. The team teaching created community. It meant that I had positive relationships. But my key adult was my teaching assistant. And that politics, I often see teachers and teacher aides having a tug of war over what's right for the child. And in the middle of all this is a child whose needs still aren't being met. Who does it benefit? There will be times as a teacher aide where you have spent the whole morning trying to reduce a child's anxiety. And then magically, a teacher will come over and say one sentence and the anxiety dissipates. And you will want to murder that teacher. You'll want to put your hands around their throat and squeeze until they smile. Because the frustration is huge because you wanted to fix it. But let's think about it. What's the desired outcome? Is the desired outcome, oh, hurrah, I'm the hero of the hour, I reduce the child's anxiety? Or is the desired outcome, one of us reduce the child's anxiety? Some days it just can't be you. Some days it might be tone of voice. Some days it might be that you're too close and they need an outsider to reassure them. Some days it might be that you're saying all the right things, but it just isn't being processed. We have to leave our ego at the door. And I say this to teachers all the time. We have to leave our ego in the doorway. It isn't about us being the one that saves the day. It's about collectively working towards the same goal and realizing some days all the things you're doing are spot on, but they're not going to work for the child. And there might be another adult, maybe their teacher aide, maybe a TA from another class, maybe a teacher that just pops in and says a few words whilst dropping in off a note, whatever. It's realizing that on those days, it's your job to support the person who can get through to the child. You know, your knowledge is still valuable, just some days it can't be you. And it isn't, it's about leaving that professional jealousy out of it. Often our teacher aides have the most creative ideas, but they're often overlooked because our teacher aides are not seen as educational professionals. They're not listened to. They're certainly not paid enough. They're not treated as professionals with a knowledge base. Ignore the knowledge of your teacher aides at your peril. They know more about the child they work with than anybody else in the building. Listen to them. That's knowledge that's there, ready and waiting for you teachers out there. Make use of it.
Well, I hope you found that helpful. I just love Dean. He has taught me so much over the years, and I highly recommend you follow Dean Beadle's Facebook page. He is always posting great tips and ideas on there too. So in Teacher Assistant Appreciation Week, there's Teacher Assistant Part 1, and then there is Part 2. So if you've done Part 1, we'll send you out Part 2. But if you're interested in doing the Dean Beadle course, just email us and we'll give you access to have a look at the free webinar for that. If you'd prefer to have a look at the Dean Beadle course, and you haven't done Part 1 but you'd like to do Part 2. I just wanted to read you what Deb said about the Dean Beadle course. So many refreshing perspectives and importance reminders. Even though I've worked as an SSO for many years, have an autistic son, and completed lots of PD on autism, I learnt so much from this. Thank you, Dean and Sue. Absolute pleasure, Deb. But I think he is just amazing, and all of the feedback from people who have done the course has been incredible. You know, Dean's a breath of fresh air. I can better understand and support my students. So any of you who have complex students, I really think the Dean Beadle course is for you, the Teacher Assistant Part 2. So just email my support team. If we send you the Part 1 Teacher Assistant course, I mean, obviously you're happy at that free webinar. You're welcome to watch the one with me, but I wonder if you would prefer the Part 2 because it really goes into a lot more depth. It has a lot more things about executive functioning, social emotional needs, transformative impact of the teacher assistant that you just heard, disclosing diagnosis, how to create a setting for children to accept themselves. So there's lots of really good things. Now, those of you who had questions around behaviour and meltdowns, a lot of that is so hard. Each school has such different rules, but I think my teacher assistant books, the red and blue ones, if you don't have those, they would be an amazing starting point. I was just looking before in the blue book, particularly if you have behaviour, I would get the blue book. If the school will only buy you one or you're having to buy it yourself, I would start with the blue book because there's heaps of stuff in there. There's nothing repeats in the two books. They're companion guides, and I'll put them on special next week as a bundle so that more of you might be able to get your hands on them. But from page 37 to I think it's like up to 50 is all about addressing behaviour in the blue book and understanding meltdowns and how to support children, creating behaviour plans and so many things, but that teacher assistants can do. And I think that's really important. Sorry, that's just me closing the book. The red and blue books are spiral bound, so you can photocopy them, put them in your programs. If lots of you are sharing a child or different people, that's why we've made them spiral bound, so they're more accessible for you. So that should be helpful for you too. Now, some of you asked about nonverbal children. Good news, I have just read the most wonderful book called Forever Boy, and someone in my Facebook community recommended it to me. Oh my goodness, I read that book in like a week, and all of the children I've worked with who are nonverbal or non-speaking, that book just reminded me of all of them. Anyway, Kate, the author, who has like over 1 million followers on Facebook, she's coming on the podcast in a few weeks. So I'm so excited. So please make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you do not miss the podcast. It is going to be amazing. Her son, Cooper, is non-speaking. She talks about all the challenges, the aggression. I highly recommend you read that book. She is such a strong advocate and so honest. And when I say the aggression, I mean, if you can't talk, you're going to be aggressive. But she talks about his collecting and all the things I've seen over the years. So I highly recommend you subscribe because that podcast, if things work out, she's got 3 or 4 children. So, we've put a time in the diary, but I've told her I'm flexible around that just with the time difference to Australia. It'll be early morning for me and late afternoon for her, which isn't always a great time with kids. So we really couldn't fit it in during school. But I also would encourage you to look at my book, Practical Communication Programs, because that is for children who are nonverbal, and it has Joshua on the front. And when I read that book, so much of it reminded me of Joshua when he was younger. I think Cooper's 10 now, and I've known Joshua since he was 3. So much reminded me of that. But In the Teacher Assistant Part 1 this week, I've got using cooking for teaching. When I worked at the autism school, we did cooking every day. Cooking is such a great thing to do with children. It's not about the eating. You can learn so many skills through cooking and the photo cookbooks I have on my website. So I highly recommend download one of my free recipes, have a look at using cooking to teach communication. And I also have some podcasts on promoting communication and using visuals. So I'll refer to those in the podcast notes to the episodes so you know which ones to listen to. So I'm just looking, I've been talking for a long time, plus we're adding in Dean Beatles. So just a reminder, Teacher Assistant Appreciation Week. Make sure you look out for an email to nominate your teacher assistants or education support staff, enrichment teams, whatever you call them, for flowers during that week. Also, if you're a teacher assistant and you don't get my emails, make sure you sign up or sign up for the teacher assistant course. If the free webinar, and then the courses, there's Part A and Part B. So they're normally $98 each or something. Anyway, they're on special for $49. So maybe, so they're sort of $50 off for Teacher Assistant Appreciation Week. I recommend you do Part A and Part B. So I think both courses together for just under $100 are invaluable. You get transcripts. We're going to give you 6 months to do both the courses. Most people do them in a day. Lots of schools release staff to do them together, and I think that's a great way because you can sit and talk about the kids. They're just 2 hours each, and then there's a Q&A with Dean and myself at the end that's sort of a bonus. So some people took more like 3 hours to do the second course, but that's because of the Q&A. You don't have to do that. That's just a bonus. You get a full transcript of the first course, not Dean's course. Dean doesn't like his words being written down, which is fine. That just makes him really anxious because of his perfectionism and OCD. So there isn't for that. However, have a beautiful Teacher Assistant Appreciation Week. Please, teachers, think about doing something special. Parents, think about writing a card for your teacher assistants or celebrating them because they're such an important part of our schools. So I hope this Q&A has been helpful no matter what your role. And don't forget, I love getting questions from you. Send me a question if you would like me to do a podcast on it. I love getting ideas from our beautiful community, and have a fabulous week. I hope you've got some great tips and strategies to make a difference. Remember, strategies wear out and not every strategy works for everybody. If you're ready to dive in deeper to more strategies and ideas to make a difference, I'd highly recommend you consider Dr. Tony Attwood or my online courses. For more information, visit my website www.sulaki.com.au.